There we go. All right, good morning or good afternoon, I suppose, to everybody. It looks like I got booted out and it was frozen, but I think I was able to reset it. So if you're just joining me, so sorry for the like in and out connection there. But welcome to week number 13. We have passed the like three-fourths point of our class. Wild to think that it is already November 8th and there aren't that many weeks left in our semester. So what I want to do today, give you a little bit of like quick feedback from last week, and then we will look at what we have going on for this week. So sorry again if you got booted out and then back in. I was having some connection issues, but it looks like everything is working okay, at least for the moment. So let's go ahead and go over to Canvas. And if you scroll down, we are right here, right? Week number 13. So we have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 left. We're in the last chunk of our class. We kind of have a little bit of a different week this week, but let's go back and talk about last week for just a moment first, and then we can talk about what we have going on for week number 13. So last week we were looking at APA formatting part 2. And you had some readings to do from that APA manual. And your discussion was all about kind of APA formatting and creating a title page. And for the most part, people did really well on this, right? I enjoyed your comments. It seemed like a lot of you liked getting to do the little formatting exercises instead of, just kind of writing stuff like usual. So I'm glad that hopefully that was helpful and kind of interesting for you. As interesting as APA style could be anyway. And then I enjoyed your title pages. There were a couple of things that I saw kind of consistently that weren't correct, but for the most part, a lot of you were on the right track. The things that I saw that a lot of people forgot to put a page number in the top right hand corner, and that was something that cost you a couple of points. A couple of people forgot to make the title bold, which seems small, but it is one of the like things that needs to happen. And then there were two of you that put a running head, and you don't actually need to do that anymore. So remember that you have a sample page here. There's the guide. There's a checklist. You also had that video that Jasmine made with me last week that hopefully was helpful. So if you lost a couple of points for formatting, make sure you kind of look over those things. You will be making another sample page or title page for me later in the semester. So really important to make sure that you have that correct. And don't forget to also reply to a classmate. There were one or two of you who didn't do that. But for the most part, really nicely done. A lot of you did a beautiful job. Same thing is true with exam number 3. A lot of you did fantastic on the test. I wrote this in my notes here, but let's see let's see if I can get to it. Too many documents open. The low score was a 44. The high was 100 and the average was right about 89%. And then the average amount of time that people took was 36 minutes. So what that tells me is most of you had more than enough time. A lot of you did really well. There were a lot of A's. So it seems like most of you are understanding the material and doing well and hanging in there. Continue to use these as a learning opportunity. If you are doing well on the exams, keep doing what you're doing. It's working for you. If you wish you had done a little better, we do still have one more exam to go, so you could always kind of change things up moving into this last unit. But for the most part, a lot of you are doing fantastically, which is wonderful, makes me really happy to see. This week we move into week number 13. And with week 13, I'm kind of taking a pause out of our normal style and content to talk a little bit about the project that we have due at the end of the semester. So I'm dedicating this week to our experiment proposal project, which will be due in the last week of the class. I want you to start thinking about it. So your reading this week is just the instructions. Your discussion will also be related to it. And then there's a little self-assessment this week to also kind of get you thinking about your progress in the class so far. So a little bit different this week, but my goal is to get you to think about that project so it doesn't sneak up on you and you can start working on it just a little bit as we near what can be kind of a difficult part of the semester for a lot of people. This is definitely starting to get into like crunch time, and I know everyone is probably tired. Thanksgiving is coming soon, a little break coming up before we have that last push of the semester. So for this week, I want you to read over these instructions and make sure you go through them in detail. I will be talking about this again when we get to the last week, But rather than waiting till then, I want you to start thinking about it. You're going to end this class with a big project. It's worth 60 points, so it's more than an exam. And the purpose is to give you an opportunity to apply all the research principles you've learned over the course of our semester. For this assignment, you will design and write up a brief proposal for an original experiment in APA formatting, along with the creation of a digital visual aid that will be presented to the class online. Both the written portion and your visual aid will be submitted online through the assignment instructions, which will be due that last week of the semester. So all in all, this should be about 5 to 7 pages, including the title page and abstract. Should have standard margins, APA style, type, double space, and all of that kind of stuff. What you're going to be doing for your experiment proposal project is the paper itself is worth 45 points. You'll be writing an APA style paper, and it should include the following components. It should have a title page, and this should be perfectly formatted, right? So this is what we worked on last week. An APA style title page including the title of your experiment, your name, affiliation, and all of the other information required by APA guidelines. Should also be formatted correctly. You should have a brief abstract page with a brief summary of your proposed experiment and also what you expect to find. You're not actually doing this research experiment, but you are writing about it as if you were going to. You'll also have a methods section. This should be a nice, big, robust section of your paper. You should be writing about participants. Who's in your study? What are their demographics? How were they selected? You're going to describe your sampling procedures. You're going to talk a lot about your design. Make sure to tell me what kind of design is it. You're going to give me each variable, how it's operationalized, what are the levels, how are we going to identify it. Be sure to discuss how participants will be assigned to their groups or conditions. Be specific, right? Show me that you know how to understand, that you understand and know how to avoid common threats to internal validity. You're also going to talk about your procedure. Provide enough details that someone could, in theory, do your study, right? Describe what the participants will be doing from the time they begin to the moment they finish. Be sure to stress the similarities and differences between the different groups and conditions. When you're writing this up, be mindful of potential confounds, also the pros and cons of your selected study. You're going to want to avoid any confounds, control for disadvantages whenever possible. And then you should have a little discussion section as well. And your discussion is going to be your predictions, along with any limitations or ethical issues you might have. You could also talk a little bit about future directions. Like if this were something that was actually done, what else could we do to build off of it? You're finally going to have two other little components, a digital flyer, just a single page document highlighting your experiment proposal. You're going to upload that along with a short video that is 2 minutes or less of you describing your experiment proposal. All of this is going to be due, sorry, that due date, I need to update that, due by the end of the semester, by that last week. I'll update that before we get closer. And here is a rubric for you. The paper itself is worth up to 45 points. The visual aid 10 points and the video 5 points. So I'm looking to see that you do all of these components together. And that is what the project will be, which isn't due till the last week of the semester. But what you're going to do this week for discussion number 13 is you're going to start thinking about it a little bit, right? Start building on what you're going to do. So here are my instructions. Make sure you're detailed in your responses and show off your knowledge and understanding. 13 points for your responses to me, and then 2 for a peer, like always. And I also made a video for you right here that you can go through, which might be really helpful. Make sure you're watching that. So read the instructions that we just looked over quickly. And then 1, you're going to share some topics that you're considering for your project. Give some serious thought to this. Try and narrow it down as much as possible so that your work this week helps you make progress toward that final paper. 2, describe your independent and dependent variables. Be sure to include how you will operationalize them, any levels that they might have, how you'll be measuring the dependent variable. Number 3, how will you acquire your sample? Discuss your sampling methods and anything relevant to that. And then number 4, what are some potential threats to internal validity and how might you address those potential threats? So my goal with this discussion is to get you to start thinking about that final project and paper now. So you're always welcome to change topics later, but if you pick something now and commit to it, it's only going to make your life easier. So give it some thought before you write about it. Try and pick something that you would consider running with. And you're going to give me some information and details about it that you'll only be adding to later. Don't forget to also reply to a classmate to get those kind of 2 easy points. The other thing that you have this week is you do have a self-assessment. You've had a couple of these so far. There's one more here. So self-assessment number 3, now that we are 3/4 of the way through the semester, I want you to take a moment to consider your progress, your grades, your approach to the class. Make sure you respond honestly, whatever you say, you're not going to lose points for being honest. But this is your chance to think about your learning progress, your process, and to see if there's anything you need to change. So this is worth 5 points. It has no time limit, so you can take your time with this. But do make sure that you do that this week. It is my way of kind of checking in and getting you to think about what you're doing and if it's working as we round into this last fourth of the semester. I will, of course, post the recording of this a little bit later. As soon as we're done, I will upload it and download it and post it right here for you. You have your wrap-up checklist like always. I do have a couple of quick reminders for you, and then I'll see if you have any questions for me. The first one has to do with checking your subscription status. It is likely expired for a lot of you, so I'm going to put this here in the chat. If you could take a moment at some point today or this week to double check that you are still subscribed on Twitch. If you're watching this later as a recording, which a lot of you probably are since there aren't very many of you in here, the only way that you can get extra credit for answering these questions is if you are subscribed. So just double check those things really quickly sometime this week. My other announcement that I have for you, our next Twitch live stream will be on Wednesday, November 15th. At 12:30 p.m. Okay, so just to put that here in the chat, we will have a live stream next week for week number 14, where I'll be going over the materials for next week. That will be on Wednesday, November 15th at 12:30. Otherwise, let me give you the extra credit question, and then we can call it a day. Unless you have any questions for me, I will hang out to see that. So this is the week number 13 Twitch extra credit question. Kind of an easy one this week, in a sense. So the question is, how many points is the experimental proposal project worth in total, and when is it due? So how many points is that project worth in total, and when is it due? So you'll go back to Canvas, and if you want to answer that, you'll click on optional Twitch extra credit number 13 right here. And then up at the top, you can click on Start Assignment. And this will give you that text box where you can type your response. Oops. You can type your response right here. And then scroll down and hit Submit. And that is worth those 2 points and a little confetti burst and some pandas riding unicycles. You never know with Canvas, right? So make sure that at some point this week you do answer that if you want to get those extra credit points, and make sure you're subscribed so you can get credit for doing so. We're at about 20 minutes, but I will hang out for a little bit if you do have any questions for me about this week or the class in general. Otherwise, get going on the materials for week 13. I hope all of you are hanging in there and doing well on this windy day that we have going on. And I will hope to see you all next week. So I'm going to minimize my video just so I'm not staring at myself. But feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat, and I would be happy to answer them. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and I will hope to see you next week. Thank you as well, Marisol. Thank you for joining me.